Hello, Santa Fe. I'm Carlene, and welcome to Living Santa Fe and the revival. We're going to discuss
The revival.
the revival of Santa Fe through literature and art. My first guest here, Arnold Vigil.
Glad to be here. How are you?
Orale.
Orale! Hey, she's local. She said it right.
I got the R's right. Everybody in Santa Fe that wants to know about somebody that grew up in Santa Fe should read this book. Honest to God, you brought me back to high school.
Oh, wow.
You did.
Thank you.
It's perfect. It's right on about everything. How did you get started writing Orale?
You mean the column itself?
Yes.
Well, they called me out of the blue at Journal North, the Albuquerque Journal, their Santa Fe bureau. I used to work at Journal North back in the mid-'80s. I was a police reporter, and I used to write the police blotter way back when they had a police blotter. And so the old editor there named Larry Calloway, who's since retired from the Journal, hired me there. And anyway, back in the early 2000s, 2004 to be exact, the Journal North editor at the time, his name is Mark Oswald, he asked Larry Calloway, the old editor, to write a column. They wanted to do a Santa Fe column. And Larry said he was burnt out, he didn't want to do it anymore, he had other fish to fry. And he lived in Colorado to boot. So he recommended me, of all people, and so Mark called me out of the blue and introduced himself and said, would you be interested in writing a column about Santa Fe? And my first reaction was, yeah, sure, yeah. And then after I got off the phone, I was all, what the heck did I just get myself into? So that's how it started.
Okay, you started that in 2004, went all the way to 2008. The country tanked, and it stopped.
It stopped. The main reason, for at least in Journal North terms, is there used to be a place at this Via Linda Mall, it was called at the time. Now it's Santa Fe Place. A big department store named Mervin's, and they bought most of the advertising for Journal North, and then they went under. Mm-hmm. And so that went half the Journal North advertising budget. So they got, and the main Albuquerque Journal too, and they let go of a lot of freelancers and columnists at the time. And I found that out later when it first happened to me. And they said we can't run your column anymore. I thought it was me, and then I realized it wasn't me. It was a whole bunch of us. So that kind of made it feel better, not a lot better, but the economy tanks a lot of things.
It sure does.
Just like it's doing now.
Just like it's doing now during this lockdown of coronavirus, as I call it, in Santa Fe. This book was wonderful. I read this during this lockdown, and it brought me a lot of laughs.
Oh wow! Thank you.
And fun. And it's a compendium. How do you like that? I know a big word.
And English too.
In British. It's a compendium.
Got to put a U in there somewhere.
A compendium of stories on Santa Fe is told a local's view.
I've been called worse.
How did you come up with these stories? I know your Aunt Angie had a lot to do with it, and your mother did.
Well, yeah, everybody that lives in Santa Fe has a story or two to tell. Not all of them are true, but most of them are true. And once you tell a story and then you tell it again, then it gets embellished, and it's kind of in that vein. And everybody has a tall tale to tell over here, and a lot of it is about real things, like how land was lost, how downtown was lost, how things were lost, and I just simply found them again.
Growing up here, you mentioned in your book how the change started, you didn't notice it. And it was the same with me. I didn't realize how quick Santa Fe was changing from what it was when I was in high school. And that's been just a few years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing how it's changed. You know, it's like when you have kids. You know, you just see them and then all of a sudden they're big people and they move out.
That's
hopefully, if they move out.
Yeah.
But you still see them as a little kid when they're actual grown-ups. Well, same thing with Santa Fe. You always think, okay, I'll meet you up there at the Sheraton. And if somebody never grew up here, they're not going to know what the Sheraton was.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, if someone is new, that used to be the Sheraton. So.
Yeah. Well, like I was telling you, I was telling somebody one day where to go to get something, and I said, oh, it's over there by Dick Hughes. Well, Dick Hughes hasn't been around for years.
It's right across from the Estrada Room.
That's
Everybody
right.
knows that.
The Estrada Room, yeah, that's another one.
Yeah, I used to stumble out of there at the bowling alley all the time.
And the Alegria Bar.
And I was only 11.
These are a few of the publications that you've worked on. Just give me a quick rundown of how you came about doing all these. Memories del Pasado, the Backtracks, Creatures and Critters.
This is just a sampling of projects that I did at New Mexico Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I worked there for almost 23 years. And this was my first book there. This was back in 1992 or 93. And when I was working at the magazine, when I first started, they had boxes and boxes of photographs. And we had just finished a move from the Joseph Montoya building, which is St. Francis and Cordova, and we moved downtown to the Lou Wallace building, which is the old St. Michael's dormitory for the brothers.
That's right.
And now, you know, it's a state building, and we moved everything from there to the other place, and there were just these boxes and boxes of photographs that nobody seemed to care about. So I salvaged them and cataloged them and put them in folders, and in the course of that, I saw a bunch of old pictures of New Mexico in there. So I thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to go and take pictures of
before and after?
Yeah, and then even the ones we took then, well, hell, they're 30 years old now, so you could probably go back and take care of them again. So that's how this one came about. And then just through editing stories and writing stories there, and all of the old materials that were at the magazine, they just grew into other projects like this calendar, and then this book, Enchanting Forever New Mexico. It's just a roundup of pictures, and then this was a project about cowboys in New Mexico.
Yeah.
And then this was a roundup of stories that columnists used to do about New Mexico animals. So, and this was a roundup of stories about turquoise. This is a real popular book.
Right.
And there's been a few others that I was involved with that were real popular, like Santa Fe the Chief Way, which was one of the designers there named John Vaughn. He was just a railroad aficionado, and he had all of these huge collections of Santa Fe Railway advertisements. So he brought them all in, and he put them together in a book, and so he had a friend write the book, and I edited the book, and that was a real popular seller too. So working there at the magazine, it just had total culture, history, events. It was just a smorgasbord of New Mexico. Very, very great place to work.
Why did the magazine shut down and it needs to be revived again?
Well, no, it's still there.
Yeah, but it's
the Santa Fean shut down.
The Santa Fean shut down.
Yeah, they always get confused.
That's right. Okay.
They confuse New Mexico Magazine with the Santa Fean and the New Mexican, and they confuse me with Brad Pitt. So it's just a common occurrence.
Well, you're looking pretty good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. You got
not quite Brad Pitt, but I try.
Creatures and Critters and Crawlers of the Southwest. I was out at the dog park walking the other day.
Yeah.
I ran across a horny toad. When was the last time you saw a horny toad in this
Oh my God, I'm not going to touch that.
Never mind.
Well, now they call them horned toads.
Well, I called them horny toads as a kid.
But back in the day when I was growing up, you'd see the horned toads everywhere. They were all over the place. Now you have to be. It's really rare to see those guys.
I see geckos now.
Yeah, they're endangered
all over the
species.
place, but the horned toads are gone.
You know, we used to hunt those. There's a place in Santa Fe called Salvador Pettis Park.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that place
I
or
do.
not. But back in the day, it was just the municipal. They called it the municipal. And there was nothing there. There were no state buildings there. And then across the street where the state buildings are was just open fields. That was the old penitentiary.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, the open fields, there were just lizards, horny toads. Back there where the Bureau of Vital Statistics is, it's right behind Trader Joe's. There used to be a little pond there even.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go catch lizards there. And there were tadpoles in there too, little frogs and tadpoles, and it's incredible.
They were at the golf course too. The salamanders all over the place.
You don't see those anywhere
You
anymore.
never see them.
And those are endangered species too. The Rocky Mountain salamanders.
Yes.
They're all. But you know, that was a wetter climate back then. So now we're pretty dry. So a lot of those species have gone the wayside as it dried up. And you blinked and it's gone too. So
Tell me one of your favorite stories in this book.
you know,
There are a bunch of men here, and I loved every one of them, but I love the old.
it's really hard to pick
What do you-
one. You know, it's just like a woman with 20 kids, and you ask her, "Which one's your favorite?" And, you know, and she's all like, "Well, I love them all the same, but equally." But you know, there's a few I like. I think there's a few that stick out. There's one now that the title doesn't sound politically correct, but it's actually a very politically correct story, and it's called Chicanitos versus Gringuitos. and that's just a story about when I was in the 4th grade at the E.J. Martinez Elementary School, and that was the first year they had just expanded the school. It used to be just a block of classrooms, maybe 14, 16 classrooms, and then they expanded it. They built the gym and they built a whole new wing of classrooms, and they started busing kids in from Pecos and Galisteo and Lamy and I guess El Dorado wasn't really around then, but that whole area too, and then Glorieta. So they bused from all around southern Santa Fe, and they bused all these kids in. Well, I had already gone to EJ for 3 grades already, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and then the 4th grade. That's when they bused all the new kids in. So it was kind of a culture shock at first, because there's all kinds of different cultures coming in. You had ranch kids coming in, you had old Hispanic family kids coming in that spoke Spanish, you know, and then there were all of us Spanish kids that went there, Hispanics that didn't speak Spanish. So we had an awakening to our own culture again. And then there were Anglo kids from that lived out in the country too that came in. So it was just a whole, like a commingling of culture there. Mm-hmm. And one of the games that we started playing out in the playground was Chicanos versus Gringos. and so you'll have to read the book to get into it, but you know, it was not mean, nothing was mean. It was just a playground game, and I'm sure that if some of the old people that were there read that, they would bring some memories back for them. But it's just a fun story.
And the terminology back then, it might be offensive today, but like in high school when I was there, it was the pachucos, the stompers,
Yes.
the nerds, the geeks.
Yes.
They weren't geeks back then, but anyhow.
All of the above. There's some pachucos in that book too.
Absolutely.
And like I wrote in there, and I'm not afraid to admit that those times I still have PTSD. And that's called Pachuco Traumatic Stress Disorder.
When I started Santa Fe High, I looked around. I had just come out of a Catholic school. I looked around and I thought, I better get to know everybody on a first name basis. Because I figured this is a good place to get killed. Because they had some rough kids in there.
It was a rough time. There was there were some kids there that were really rough and tumble, and you know, now that we're all grown up, we all realize, hey, we're basically the same.
We're all the same.
You know, and even though we seemed different at the time, well, we grew up, and that was a testament to the way the schools were set up back then too, because everybody went to the same school.
You had more exposure
when you got older
to everybody, and I cherish those days because today I still see a lot of these people I went to school with, and we all know each other.
Yeah.
At the time, we didn't understand each other, but if you worked at it a little bit, pretty soon you began to understand each other, and as a result, we're pretty good friends today. And that's the glory of living in Santa Fe.
And that's just a whole part of Santa Fe culture and Santa Fe style. That it's, you know, just what you just described there is Santa Fe style. It's a commingling of a lot of things, and we tend to get the best out of all of them, and hopefully that will continue. I just hope that it does.
We're having some protests today, marches. I think this is a good thing. There's prejudice. There's prejudice in this town.
Yeah, it's always going to be.
It's always going to be that way.
It's always going to be that way, and then at least in this town, though, on the surface, people don't let it come out.
That's right.
It may come out at home, it may come out among friends, but on the surface, we live in a place that treats people decently.
That's right.
And that's all you can ask. And you know, we rarely have police shootings here. We rarely have race wars here. I don't think I've ever seen a race war here, other than E.J. Martinez Playground 50 years ago or whatever it was. But that wasn't even really a race war. It was a game of race.
Yes.
And
but you call it hodazos back then.
The hodazos. And you can't say that around church ladies. So don't say hodazos around church-going ladies. Say fregazos.
The fregazos.
I got away with hodazos early on in the column, but I think around the third year or so, they hired an Hispanic reporter over there, or someone who knew Spanish, and they told Mark Oswald, the editor, hey, you can't put that. So I got a call from Mark saying, hey, we can't use hodazos anymore. I said, why not? Because they said that's a dirty word.
Yeah.
And I said, dang, you finally got me.
You
I
know,
was getting away with it up to now.
It's funny, the terminology here in Santa Fe. I had a friend of mine when I worked for the highway department. She gave me the nickname of being pinche gringa. And it was a term of affection with her. And so one day I was walking down Guadalupe Street, and she comes down, she rolls her window down, pinche gringa. And there was this little viejita coming up the road. She said, that was an insult. And I started laughing. I said, no, it's a term of affection. It was. Like Sarah Grace, you know Sarah. You know, she died a couple of weeks ago. Sarah was the guardian of the state legislature. She worked at the reception desk. Every time I'd go in there, she'd say, cabroncita, mijita. It was not offensive. Some people take things wrong.
Depends the tone, I guess.
It was the tone of the way people use it.
Yeah. Well, you know, a lot of people that moved here and have read this book, they it seems one of their favorite questions is, when do I become a local? You know, and I think that you just described, you know, something that if someone can identify with the culture here and doesn't get offended when someone calls them what did you say? I can't say it because
I know, I'll say it, cabroncita.
Because if I say it, then it'll probably be taken as offensively.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just a state of mind. And I think that when people come here and they respect the past, they respect the culture, well, the true local people here are going to embrace that and welcome them in.
That's true.
It's when they reject it and ignore it and act like it doesn't exist, then that's when things happen.
Or try to change it.
And change it too, yes.
You know, we have things now that are put on hold. The Fiesta, Zozobra, Spanish Market, Native American Market, International. I don't want to see those things go away, especially the Spanish Market, because that's that is Santa Fe.
Right.
And we have so many artists from Santa Fe that are putting their artwork in there, and it's marvelous. And you want to keep that culture because it's coming from way back.
Yes,
It's not something that's new.
Totally important, and you know, they mimic things that were totally traditional in nature, and they try and stay strict to that, which is good. And it, you know, it's just a testament to people back in the early 1900s, and a lot of them, I admit, weren't Hispanic, but they did see an importance in reviving and preserving traditional forms of art, and a lot of that was Spanish market and Indian market,
That's right.
which were reinvented back in the early 1900s, and you know, a lot of that flavor we still have today, and you know, part of that was of course the entrada and the fiesta, which caused a lot of controversy.
That's right.
But you know, we'll get through that. We'll get through that, and we always have. We always will.
I hate to see that leave. I know there were some miscommunication and history that was not correct. And you and I talked about that the other day about.
Well, you know, what we can do, and the Fiesta Council, you know, it took them a while, but they did admit that there were inaccuracies. And they weren't stubborn enough to say, hey, okay, we're not going to change. They admitted that there was some inaccuracy, and hopefully from this point on we can change and just not ignore what happened. And that's when you get in trouble, is when you ignore the past.
Yes.
And you can't change it. You can't, you know, you can only just remember what was true and be accurate about it and apply it to the norms of today.
Yeah.
But too many times in this discussion, and on both sides, we're using today's standards to judge the past.
Yes.
And you can't do that. The past was a different era, and things were done differently then.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't whip kids anymore, because you can't do that anymore. Back then they'd whip kids, and that's just one example.
Yeah.
And same thing with history. They did things when cultures clashed. It was more violent. It was a lot more cruel. And today we don't do that. And we're judging by today's standards, those standards.
You know, we chose this place today. Tommy Macioni, his statue is right back here. I remember the last time I saw Tommy, he was right on this corner here. And he was painting some daisies. And I stopped and I talked to him and I said, that's just beautiful. You do such, you know, he was bright colors and everything. And he said, do you have a good name for this painting? I said, yeah, call it the Day's Eyes. Whether he ever used that or not, I don't know. But that was the last time I saw Tommy Macioni, and he always had, you know, he lived in a place where he had 15, 20 dogs, and he got into all kind of trouble over that.
Right.
But this is his park now, and he's standing here watching us right now.
Boy, he was perennial mayor candidate and
El
just
Differente party.
Just fixture in downtown with his palette and paints and going around and painting here and there. My dad one time, way back in the 60s, told me that one time Tommy came up to him and asked him if he'd buy a painting for $5 because he was hungry.
Yeah.
And my dad said no, he didn't want to buy it. He thought $5 was too expensive. And now, you know, well, later my dad has passed away, but later my dad said, I wish I would have bought that painting.
You bet.
And
they're
I'm
going
sure
for quite a bit of money
I'm
now.
sure they're worth a fortune now.
Yeah.
But yeah, he used to just go and peddle his painting of the day and just get pennies for him, really, basically. And just a wild character. You know, we see a lot of them in town, but he's one that just is just stuck around.
Yep. This book, Orale, tell them what Orale means. People out they don't get it.
Well, basically it's like a catch-all phrase. Orale could mean yes, or it could just mean just an acknowledgement.
Just an acknowledgement.
It could be vague too. You know, you'd say, hey, do you have that money? that you owe me? And you go, orale. It's like, you don't really say yes or no, so.
You just...
But it just depends on how you use it. Yeah, I'd say, orale.
Yeah.
And that meant, or it could mean, how are you doing? How's it going?
You get your R's right, too.
Orra. Thank God for that Ruffles Have Ridges commercial, and I never would have got it right. They don't show that anymore either. So.
How do people get this book? Is there a way they can get online?
Yeah, locally you can order it through mnmpress.org or collectedworksbookstore.com. That's how you can order it locally. If once things start opening up, it'll be back in the museum shops. It'll be in Collected Works. Otherwise, you can order through the national book ordering outlets also. But if you want to shop local, M&M Press is a good place, and the local museum stores or Collected Works.
Okay, and the forward, Max Evans, were you friends with him?
Max Evans, I met while I was at the magazine, and he used to write stories for us once in a while, and I was lucky enough to call him on the phone and get to know him, and I finally got to meet him in person one time down in Las Cruces. I was doing some interviews for this book with some cowboys down in Las Cruces, and a person at the magazine named John Bowman, he was involved with the Santa Fe Film Festival, and he was able to get an old film filmed in Albuquerque called Lonely Are the Brave.
Yes.
With Kirk Douglas and Walter Matthau.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, that book is based on an old book by Edward Abbey. And Edward Abbey and Max Evans were good friends. And so they invited Max to go down there and celebrate the digitization and restoration of that movie, Lonely Are the Brave, which was shot, I think, around 1960, maybe 59, somewhere around
59,
there.
59, I think.
And Max attended that, so we were all at a panel there, and in conjunction with that film being shown again publicly and restored, they were opening up a recently renovated Fountain Theater on the old Mesilla Plaza, and it's an old movie theater, and they digitized that place too. So it was just like a big celebration of a lot of things. And so on the panel there, I was able to meet Max in person finally, and he remembered me, and so we just hit it off. And why we really hit it off is the movie is about to start. I was excited because I wanted to see old Albuquerque, and right before the movie was going to start, Max said, "I gotta get out of here. I can't watch this goddamn movie again." And I said, "Max, I want to see this movie." And he said, "Well, I'll meet you at the bar over there on the plaza later." I said, "Okay." So later we met for some beers and drinks, and then really got to know each other. So that's how I first met him. And then fast forward 30 years later, I thought, I wonder if Max would write an opening for this, if he remembers me. And so I called him out of the blue again. He remembered me, and I went down to his house in Albuquerque, and we hit it off again, and we talked about Santa Fe and how he first came to Santa Fe when he was a teenager, and we talked about some mutual friends here. One of them being, and you probably remember her, Kelly Garrett.
Oh, absolutely, Ellen Bolton.
Ellen Bolton, he remembers them. And
Townhouse.
Max is responsible for Ellen going to Los Angeles and getting in touch with the right people.
She was great. She was a really wonderful singer.
Yes.
And she did kind of make it in the big time.
She was big time there for a while.
She died young.
And poor Max and her, they had a falling out. I don't know exactly what happened, but Max basically took her under his wing and went to Los Angeles and introduced her to some big shots up there, and Ellen, became Kelly Garrett, and was on the Johnny Carson show many times, and was on had her own Kelly Garrett show, and was on some other shows, and was just on the brink of becoming major.
Yeah.
And so I told him, well, reason I knew Kelly Garrett and her name and all that was because I went to school
I
with
was gonna
Kelly's
say,
younger sister,
yeah,
Frances.
yeah.
Frances has since passed away, but Frances and me were schoolmates, and
Yeah.
and Frances would always tell me, "Hey, Kelly's going to be on Johnny Carson tonight."
Yeah, she was a little bit younger than me, but I remember double dating at the townhouse, and she was there with Jimmy Shelton, Dennis Martinez.
Dennis is the one who told me about all this.
Absolutely, yeah.
Guitar player, and he went out there with Kelly, and he went out there and he knew Max. Dennis told me that Max flew them all out to Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and that Dennis was starting to become well known in musician circles there. And Dennis told me that he even dated that actress who used to play the Catwoman on the old Batman series.
Oh, the old Batman, yes.
Do you remember the Catwoman?
I
forgot
remember,
her name.
I can see her, but I can't remember the name.
Real pretty
Yeah.
lady.
Yes.
But she said that he was dating her when she got that role.
Uh-huh.
But then she got big time and dumped him for somebody more
Dumped him?
famous. Poor guy. That happens to all of us
We've all been dumped at one time or the other.
by someone famous.
Yeah, well, not famous in my case, but infamous. Okay, Arnold, thank you for being on the show today.
Well, thank you
And,
for having me.
Thank you for helping me make it through COVID-19
Oh,
with this book. I recommend it highly for people new in Santa Fe and also for people that have lived here for a long time.
thank you.
And you continue peeling it, man.
I'll peel it. This has been kind of work here. I can go back to sleep now.
Okay, Arnold, thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And órale, Santa Fe.